Hey there, Infinity people. Frank Valente here. Now, normally I am the hand drumming instructor at Infinity, but today I'll be coming to you as a computer scientist. Today we are going to make a computer program that makes music using a free software called Pure Data. So, the first thing we should do is to open up our web browser and go to Pure Data, caps lock on, .info. This is where the program lives on the internet, and we're going to go to downloads. And then we are going to scroll down to distributions. Now, there are many different types of Pure Data. People have edited the software over the years, so you might see PDL2org or PD Extended or many other distributions of Pure Data. But today we are looking for Miller-Puckett's vanilla distribution. Miller-Puckett is the original inventor of Pure Data. He invented it in the 90s and has been updating it for free ever since, and has since become a very important tool to electronic musicians. Now, you can download 49, 49-1, or 49 or 50-0. Any one of these will do just fine. I think I'm currently on 49-1. It doesn't get updated very often, but when it does, little changes happen. So any one of these distributions, click on them, and it'll take you to this page, and you download whatever is the appropriate Pure Data distribution for you. For me, it's Mac. For you, it might be Windows. Now, let's open up Pure Data. This program right here just imports my audio into Logic, so I'm going to minimize that. So, if you open PD, the first thing you are going to see is this terminal window. This terminal window is the brains of PD, and it'll help run everything, but it's not where we work from. Notice how my Pure Data says that the audio is on, and that is because this checkbox right here turns on the DSP. Now, DSP is the engine of Pure Data. It's called the Digital Signal Processing. This is what turns the numbers into the sounds that we hear. Okay, so let's open up a brand new file. And first thing we're going to do is save it. So let's save it as PD underscore actually not tutorial, lesson 1 underscore make a sound. In most computer programming languages, just like Pure Data, it's important to not have spaces because it often confuses the computer or just won't run the file. And we'll see in later lessons that we're going to use programs that we write maybe a lesson or two before and bring it back to the lesson that we are currently doing. So just getting into the habit of not not leaving spaces is really important in computer programming. So let's save that. Now the top has changed, but it still says edit. So when you want to edit a Pure Data file, you are going to press Command E if on a Mac, or Control E if you're on Windows. And notice that when we press the edit function, Command E or Control E, you're going to see the words edit if we are allowed to make edits. And this becomes important when we start putting in manipulatives such as buttons and toggle switches, which will be coming later. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make an object. If you're on a Mac, this can be done by pressing Command 1, or if we are working from a Windows computer, Control 1. Notice now we have a box, a dashed line box, and the first thing we're going to put in there is OSC, and then you're going to press Shift tilde. Now, the tilde character is found right underneath the escape button. And then you're just going to click off. Actually, no, we're going to put a space, and then we're going to put 440. So let's do that one more time. We're going to do OSC, shift the button under the escape button in the upper left hand corner called tilde, space 440. So let's zoom in. You can do that by pressing Command+. Now we have an object that says it is an oscillator, and it is going to put out a pitch of 440. The oscillator, or sine wave generator, is the voice of the computer music world. Very good. Now notice that these objects have little black boxes in the corner. Those are what's called inlets and outlets. This is how this type of computer language works. We can actually draw a line to subsequent objects and connect them in a series. So there are two types of connections. There are signal connections, which are these thick black lines, and then if we have something like a number box, they have a thin line. And this is an information connection. So this just sends like simple numbers, where this sends audio signals. But we'll talk about this in a second. So now that we have our oscillator, we have to amplify it. Now in the real world, we would do that using a VCA, or a voltage control amplifier. But in the computer world, we just have to multiply whatever signal we get. So to multiply something, we're going to press Shift 8 to get the star sign. And because we are dealing with a signal, just like before, we have to use the tilde, which again is the Shift button plus the button, the key rather, right underneath the escape sign. And so we have multiply tilde. And you're going to notice that everything that deals with processing signals is going to use this tilde, again, which is our shift, and the key right below the escape key. Next, we're going to press space, and we're going to give it a value. Let's give it a value of 0.5. So it won't be the loudest thing. 1 is our loudest sound in the program. So 0.5 is about talking level. Okay, so now we have our oscillator, which is our voice. We have our amplifier, which is our multiply tilde. And now we need to output it. We need to send it in the world. And we can send it to the speaker by, again, pressing Command 1 to get our object box. And we're going to put in DAC tilde. And that's all we have to write. Notice how the DAC tilde, or digital to audio converter, has two inlets. Our inlets go to the left channel and the right channel, or the left speaker and the right speaker. Pure data allows up to 64 channels. So if you can imagine having 64 speakers, you could actually send a voice to 64 different speakers in one program. But today we're just going to output to two channels, our left speaker and our right speaker. Now if you notice, ooh, little loud. Maybe not for yours, but for mine. There we go. Notice that we're hearing a straight pitch. This is A440. Many of us could recognize that as a tuning note. So right now we're just listening to the most pure sound that we can hear, which is a sine tone. So I'm going to delete the connections so I don't have to talk over it. So this is our most basic computer music program. It's the sine tone. It's the first thing that we invented when we started doing computer music. It becomes a fundamental part of it. So where do we go from here? Well, we could look at it. So to look at something, we need to use the tab right tilde shift key under the escape sign, and we need to give it a name. So let's call it look at wave. Now this is going to be important. We need to make a array that is the same name as this. This will make sense in a second. Next we're going to go to our put, and we're going to go to array and click on array. Then we are going to paste the name of the array from the tab right. So the array needs to have the same name as our tab right. Look at wave, points, new graph. Cool. Zoomed in here. Now we have a graph that we can actually draw on. And that could be important later, but right now we are going to write something to this graph. Okay. Now this is going to be one of those objects that takes both information and signals. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect our oscillator and our amplifier to the tab right. Alright, perfect. Tab right is all connected up. But notice how nothing has changed over here. We're sending a signal over, and that's because in everything in computer music when we're analyzing needs to have something that continually checks. Continually says, hey, time to check what's going on. So the way we do that is first we are going to write toggle in a new object, and it's going to change it into this little toggle box. And then from the toggle box we are going to write another object called metro, which stands for metronome. And let's give the metronome, we're going to press space, let's give this metronome a timing of 50 milliseconds. So I should be commenting this more, I'm sorry. The metronome sends out what's called a bang. And if I were to hook it up, change the timing, notice how it sends out a click every 250 milliseconds, which makes this, but we don't need to look at that right now. So the metronome sends a bang every X milliseconds. But for our purposes, we want something shorter, like 50. Okay, so we have our metronome, and we have our tab right. And so let's connect our metronome to our tab right. And there we go. Now we have what's called an oscilloscope. An oscilloscope takes a signal and puts it into a visual representation. Now for us, this is moving too fast. We can't really look at it. So let's change how fast the metronome moves. But let's do it in a different way than we have edited numbers before. Let's press the command key and then 3. If you're on a Windows device, you can press Control 3 instead, since you don't have a command button. And let's hook up this number box to the metronome's rightmost inlet. So notice on the metronome it also has 3 black inlets. The one on the left turns it on and off. The one on the right says how many milliseconds it will wait before sending out a bang. And a bang, it just tells the computer to do something. It's comparable to a mouse click. Same thing as a mouse click, but we can automate the computer to even just do mouse clicks. Okay, so we realize that 50 milliseconds, we can type in 50 or we can scroll it up and down. We realize that 50 milliseconds was not super helpful, 50, into analyzing what's going on with this waveform. So what we can do is have the computer wait longer. We could even get a 1-second snapshot. Now this is super helpful. Notice that the wave is in different phases as we slow down our metronome, and as we speed it up, we're going to see more and more of the wave transforming. So again, this is just a visual representation of what a waveform looks like. And this will be super helpful as we start making more complicated sounds. Now just because we have this connected to one thing doesn't mean that we can't have it connected to something else. So now we're going to connect it back to our DAC or our DAC. And let's move this down so we get a clear signal. This is all grouped together. So as we get more and more into the world of computer music programming, we're going to realize that having things look neat is going to not only help us, but help people who are trying to edit our code. So now we have the oscilloscope. It is outputting 440 into an amplifier. That amplifier is going out to our speakers or our digital audio converter. Let's do a couple more things before we end the video. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to change the pitch of our oscillator. Now, just like we can use a number box here to show us different or speed up and slow down our oscilloscope, metronome, we can do the same thing with the oscilloscope, or I'm sorry, with the oscillator. We can actually change the pitch. So notice how we go from a low oscillator, a low hertz. Remember, this is in hertz, which is the hertz is the smallest unit of pitch. So notice that as we go from low to high, our oscilloscope gets smaller and smaller, or the waveform in our oscilloscope gets smaller and smaller. And there's our classic sound wave kind of look. Alright, let's bring this back down. Ooh, to 440. Perfect. Sorry for the high note. I'll try to make a edit in the video so that so I can warn you ahead of time. Alright, so we can do the same thing with the volume, but I think I'm going to leave that for next time. So just to review what we learned today. Today we learned about the basic computer music function. We learned about the voice, or the oscillator. That could be spelled wrong, but it's okay. You get the idea. Then we have the amplifier. That also looks wrong. We have the amplifier, which in the real world would be called the voltage controlled amplifier. So we would add more electricity that would make it louder. And we learned about the oscilloscope. And I'm just going to say oscope, which is how I usually, which turns audio into a visual representation. And we learned how to turn a signal into information. And that information is going to be helpful for us later when we want to make more complicated sounds. But like I was saying, today is just an intro. We did the most basic computer music function. I'm happy to be bringing you these tutorials once or twice a week. Sorry if they're a little unedited, but I try to do these in one shot so I don't get too sidetracked. Tune in later this week, and we're going to talk about how to control the amplifier using an oscillator, and talk about adding voices to make more complex sounds. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you soon.